Okay, so the 5.8 is going to be all about the impacts of overfishing. And so let's go ahead and get started with these notes. Okay, so bringing up this PowerPoint. All right, so the impacts of overfishing. So let's talk about a few vocab words that you need to know. First of all, you should know what a fishery is. A fishery is a population of fish that's used for commercial fishing. And fishery collapse occurs when overfishing causes 90% of the population to decline in a fishery. So population, when it reaches this 90% decline, means that it may never actually recover because of decreased biodiversity, the inability of fish to find mates, and inbreeding depression. So in other words, a lot of inbreeding is going to occur, which doesn't allow for a lot of genetic variation. And if there's not a lot of variation or biodiversity within the population, that can be an issue, as we know. All right, and so like I said, this decreases that genetic biodiversity, and then these species can just be lost from the ecosystem. This has a lot of economic consequences for a lot of various parties, which includes fishermen. They lose their income, they lose their jobs. It can also tourism dollars in communities can be lost because if we're not able to provide food or we're not able to provide entertainment, like if you've ever been snorkeling in an area, if there are not fish and things there to see, it's not going to be very exciting for the tourists, so they won't want to come to the area. Okay. And so we can kind of see that overfishing in a period, if we look at this graph, from 1975 to 1985 led to a sharp loss of profits from 1985 to 2018. And this is in the New England groundfish, which is a type of fish that is actually collapsed. And so this is essentially just another example of tragedy of the commons, and there was no incentive or penalty to prevent overfishing from 1975 to 1985. And so that's just a real life example there using that graph. So let's talk about some ways that overfishing occurs, and the first way the first fishing practice that we use that I want to talk about is called bottom trawling. And this is an especially harmful fishing method because it involves basically just dragging a large net along the bottom of the ocean floor. And so here's a picture of bottom trawling in action. And you can see what it's going to do is it's not just picking up the fish, it's picking up the coral and everything that's here on the bottom of the ocean floor as well. It also disrupts the sediment and any other marine life that's living down there, like crabs and things that we may not necessarily be fishing for that day. And so it actually creates plumes of sediment that can be seen from space if bottom trawling is used. And so it really interrupts this like deep sea habitat, and we end up with catching things that we don't necessarily want to catch, and we call that bycatch. We end up with a lot of unwanted things that are caught that we don't necessarily want to catch, like a starfish and things like that. Okay, some really disastrous types of bycatch are things like catching dolphins unexpectedly in the net, or whales, or sea turtles. And then that really is a problem for the ecosystem. And so this practice of bottom trawling dramatically decreases the biodiversity by killing species that we're not actually targeting. We call that targeted species, and removing that coral reef habitat. Coral reef is like a keystone species, or coral is a keystone species of a reef ecosystem. Okay, and then fishing down the food web creates an actual trophic cascade. So as we deplete these large predatory fisheries, we move down to then smaller fish. And so if we eliminate like salmon, tuna, sturgeon, and rockfish, we run out of those. Well, now we need to get other types of fish to feed on. So then we're going to start eating or fishing for herring and mackerel and anchovies and sardines. And what happens then when those run out? So this just creates a trophic cascade that can be really hard to recover from. So the other issue is now if we eat all of these fish and now we're fishing for these, we'll never see a recovery in these larger predatory fish because now we're fishing their food source and what are they going to then eat? So that's a real problem. This, as you can see, would also impact all of the seabirds and all of the marine mammals as well. Okay, and so that's where that trophic cascade then occurs. And then we'll see a huge increase in like the zooplankton population down here at the bottom. And that can get a decrease, that then causes a decrease in the phytoplankton population. And if we end up having no producers in the ecosystem, then we can just completely destroy an entire aquatic food web. All right, so here we are with Practice FRQ 5.8. You need to propose a solution to address the issue of fishery depletion.